All right, welcome everybody. The date is September 28th, 2021, and this is the Cloud Custodian Community Meeting. Just a quick reminder that the CNCF Code of Conduct is in effect, and we are recording these and we put these on YouTube's and we publish the notes in the GitHub repo as well. So please be cognizant of that as you're making comments. Here's the schedule. We kind of go through the same schedule every time. We have a quick introduction section, some agenda items. The agenda is open for anyone to feel free and add things that you would like to see discussed. And you could do that by following the link that I put in chat. And I also put that link in the Gitter chat as well for the project. And if you don't want to mess with any of that, you can always just contact me and ask me to put something on the agenda, and I can do that for you. And then we go through stuff in the agenda every 2 weeks, publish the notes into GitHub, and then rinse and repeat over and over again until we keep busting out items and work items for me to do. So with that, usually we have about 5 minutes for introductions. If this is your first meeting or you haven't been in a while, you want to say hello, this is the chance to do it. You don't have to, it's all optional. But I'll go first. My name is George Castro. I work at Stacklet, and he, him are my pronouns. And I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. If anyone else wants to say hello, no pressure.
Can't let you go solo, George.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, everyone's been here before, and everyone kind of says hello before we start recording, so
somebody
whatever.
has to jump in. AJ Kerrigan at Stacklet, also pronouns he, him, and just here rocking out with Custodian. Nothing more to add.
Right.
Hello.
All right. Don't worry, I added a section on changelog.py so we can laugh about that.
Oh, yeah, that was good fun.
All right, and with that, let's just move on to the agenda here. I'm gonna start with governance as code day first, because Umair usually has a time limit and can't stay to the whole meeting, and is one big event that's coming up. So Umair, you want to take us through governance as code day with Cloud?
Yeah, I think most of you already know about the event and are presenting as well, so thank you for that. We have the schedule published. We're still waiting for a couple of more talks approvals, like internal approvals, before we get them posted. But I'm excited to announce we have Brian from HBO Max, who is a CISO there, and they use Custodian at scale, and he's going to talk about a bunch of things other than Custodian as well, more strategic in nature, how security can actually be enabled than the typical people think about security inhibiting stuff. We'll also do a community State of the Union session on the community by Kapil and a bunch of other folks. Then we have a bunch of speakers from Zapier, Code 42. Akif is on the call already.
Hey, Akif.
He'll be one of the presenters as well. Emily Freeman, who's the writer of DevOps for Dummies. She's also a principal at AWS. I think she also wrote a book called something around 59 cloud engineering code. So I think that's one of the best sellers too now. But I ran out of space for her to write her titles and her compliments. So, but definitely I'm super excited for her to talk to her too. And then we have Austin from Premise Data. I don't think Austin has ever joined us on this call, maybe once or twice.
Okay.
Sonia on this call as well is going to talk about safe policy rollouts for GitOps. We're still waiting for a couple of more approvals before we finalize the schedule and move things around. And then we have a talk on Azure as well. John Hillgrass, who typically, I think not here today, but he joins these calls as well, who's one of the maintainers too. He's going to be talking about pattern filtering within Amazon Event Bridge as well. And Carl, our friend, he's not today on as well. He's doing a presentation as well, like how you can replace some of the actual management controls within AWS with Custodian and save a lot of money. Right? Everyone loves to save money. And of course, our very own Liz and Jameson have a session as well, talking about some of the other tools within the Custodian toolbox. But I'm pretty excited about the lineup. We are still waiting for a couple of more talks to be finalized. But I think for our first big community day, this seems to be a pretty decent startup. So I'm super excited. And if you can help us spread the word as well, if you haven't signed up, please sign up for the talk. And I believe we have a lot of people signed up already, so we're super excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the numbers? How many people are joining?
So far,
Mm-hmm.
so far we have crossed 1,000.
Okay.
But naturally, it's all virtual now, right? So everyone will be virtually.
And do we plan to put those talks on the YouTube later?
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. So this becomes great content for everyone in the community afterwards. And honestly, a lot of virtual events, because especially free events, a lot of this stuff is done for recordings as well, right? It's recorded afterwards, but if you're at the event virtually, you'll have the capability to interact with people. Like Hopin has some networking capabilities as well. And unfortunately, we really wished it was a physical event so we can, meet each other and network and really do the community piece. But we'll try and best to do that within Hopin as well. So, but I think even if we have the talks available afterwards, there will be a networking element that people might miss out on if they don't rely.
Yeah, and one thing I found handy as well is the speakers link will send you to people's LinkedIn pages and things like that. So if you're wondering what books people have written and that kind of stuff, it's all handy here. This was not obvious to me when I first went to the page until you scroll, but these 3 tabs here will take you to the different sections of the page. So that's really handy. All right. Anything else for Governance's Code Day with Cloud Custodian? I'm going to get that title right somehow. So, all right. And then the final reminder, remember, you don't need to be registered at KubeCon or Cloud Native Con to attend. You could just send whoever you want to show up to that link and they can register for free. Any final questions now that we've gone through the schedule and all the goodies? All right, Liz, you're up with regular weekly doc sprint sessions. Do we want to combine this with the other one? I think that's what we want to do.
Yeah,
We
I
have
think
a
that
section
is
on that.
ultimately.
Yep, and then this one I have in twice.
But yeah, I could go for it now. But
Okay.
basically, can't remember when it was. I went on vacation, so I'm just back in this week. So just trying to get reoriented. So there was an issue that had come up. It was asking about filtering, Cloud Custodian filtering, so client-side filtering versus server-side filtering. And the issue made the point that maybe it might be helpful to include that in our documentation, that server-side filtering is available within a policy query block. Me and AJ talked about it this morning. And we decided that this might be, like, documenting this might be something we want to tackle in this week's doc sprint, because there's a lot of questions there, such as, and most importantly, how do we document this without adding unnecessary complexity or confusion? And so it'd be a really cool practice, I think, for the doc sprint to go over this together.
Yeah, there's also there's a good amount of unintended complexity as well, due to how server-side queries affect resource caching. In many cases, it will decrease cache utilization for people running lots of policies against the same resource type. So, in addition to all the fact that it's very bespoke and resource specific and source specific and other things, but yeah.
No, AJ and I talked about that this morning, and exactly, like, that's would be the challenge here, is making that, how do you convey that as clearly as possible? Because yeah, it is a very, like, there is very limited use cases for this, or that would call for this, but yeah.
I would definitely it's definitely useful to go through a couple of worked examples. Like, if you have 20 resource policies and I'm on a resource, then doing a server-side filter here probably isn't appropriate. On the other hand, if you have 2 million EBS snapshots and you need to get through them, this is potentially useful for you. The worked examples is probably the only way I can think of to make it approachable and not too in the weeds nuanced. And somehow, if we documented on the resource level what the server side specific filters are, we'd probably just common link to, before you use these, read this first. But 2 cents.
Question for the group. How is something determined whether it supports server-side filters or not? Is it a certain class of resources? Is it arbitrary or?
So it depends.
Okay.
So server-side filters are for the default source, which is described. It is done on a resource-specific basis, and it's typically where the underlying service exposes some additional filtering capabilities that we've exposed it, and there was direct need to do so. So EC2 instances, EBS snapshots, and it's pretty ad hoc, and we'd have to probably go through some stuff to be able to document that fully. For other sources, like AWS config, it's actually a generic capability that applies across all resources. So it is both source specific and, in some contexts, resource specific. Type specific.
Good to know. All right. Well, if you're looking to help out, Liz and I meet on Fridays, and that meeting is open to anyone on Fridays. And we basically take an hour, pick something that the community wants documented, and document this. And how do you find that out? Well, if you go to the Cloud Custodian website, you'll notice a new tab here in the top right that says Calendar. And if you click on that, it will take you to the Cloud Custodian community calendar, which we're able to merge in. I talked about this a little bit while it was in progress. You'll see this meeting on that calendar, and you'll see the weekly doc sprints as well. And we're basically going to work on adding anytime there's more than 1 or 2 Cloud Custodian people at any given conference, we can add stuff in there so that you can see where they're at and that kind of stuff. So definitely check that out, and you can click the button there to subscribe to that. Any questions on Fridays or the calendar?
Thanks for getting that added. By the way, I know that was a request that came out of the community, and
Yeah,
thank you.
I was like mangling iframes by hand. I didn't like that, but it was definitely fun. It was a good thing to figure out, and something that will definitely help us in the future once we get a nicer website and stuff. We have a better idea of what we want. I think that totally helps. Okay, so that covers that. I want to go back now and get us back in order. So this item is now, we discussed that. Kapil, you have an item from last week, working on getting CI down to under 5 minutes. And however, tangentially related, we had a issue that Liz filed that the doc HTML wasn't generating properly from the source for the docs. So I kind of lumped all these together into Kapil's doing a bunch of work on CI to bring the time down. And I know you wanted to status update us here on this.
So there's, it's maybe worth taking a high level view for a second. We currently use all the CI systems. we have Azure DevOps. We have GitHub Actions. We have a custom drone server. We have some code build doing functional tests. We have a lot of different things, and we also have Docker Hub automated builds. Like we have a bunch of things, and I'd say there's there's a couple high level goals here. One, we want to make it really easy to contribute and make we don't want developers to have to page out after they do a PR contribution. And so this is all really around contributor UX as well as simplification. And the first part of this work has landed, which has been revamping our CI pipelines to do better cache utilization. I think we have seemed like basically have the time and reduced a lot of variance out of CI. So CI should fully complete. Your first end-to-end test run should be under 2 minutes, about 2 minutes on the spot. So that work's done. I think we have a separate thing of I'd like to kill the drone server and move the doc image for the documentation publishing to GitHub Actions. there's a third one here that's been requested, and I don't know how significant this is for other people on the call, but ARM image support.
Ooh,
ARM
okay.
AAR64. Specifically, I think this is mostly for people in AWS because I don't think the other clouds even have those as far as Graviton support. And due to some complications of how we have built, we're directly talking to Docker to do a lot of our image publishing. So this is switching out some of that API usage for switching out to Docker BuildX. The hope is that, and this is also in the hopes of currently the slowest part of our build at the moment is now the Docker building. So this is also addressing to, two birds with one stone. Let's get AAR64. Let's also get our Docker build times to 2 to 3 minutes by taking advantage of the GitHub Action Cache. So our Docker build matrix is actually also a little complex. Some that gets built, we have some that get built sort of per commit. We have some that get built nightly, and we get some that get published per release. And those are actually all built in different locations. And we also have some light functional tests that run as part of that. So there's a notion here of at least getting the CI portion of that moved over to GitHub Actions from Azure DevOps, and in the process of that, also getting to supporting AAR64, which is really just using cross compilation in BuildX is pretty nice, and so we're just going to utilize that. I don't know that there's a huge amount of priority attached to that work right now. It is nice. It's a nice to have. Definitely interested. There is a GitHub issue for AAR64 support. If ARM64 support matters to you, please start that issue. That would be great, just to know that there's interest in that. I've also been debating, because of how big our Docker images are getting, potentially splitting out on our official publications images by provider. Specifically, the Azure image, the Azure SDK is extremely bloated, just because of how Microsoft publishes the way they publish their SDK. It represents almost 2/3 of our image size is represented by the underlying Azure SDK. So potentially looking at there's multiple options. One is we strip the Azure SDK. They keep old generated code versions for things that we don't care about. And there have been publications to the effect of this is how you can strip the SDKs of those old versions. The other one is let's just publish exactly what you need. I don't know that we would do that. We would continue to retain all of our existing images. So people that are, and I think even for C7 and org, we would continue it as is. I think though that we would add to our image build list a set of provider-specific images with corresponding labels to our existing versions. So if you just care about AWS, you can just download the AWS one. I'm still noodling on that. There's other implications on some of that stuff, but it is a thought. If that sounds interesting to people, then definitely curious to hear feedback from others. But and then keeping going, I think the next topic, I think the doc build one's probably pretty easy, and that one unfortunately causes some pain every 60, 90 days whenever the Let's Encrypt SSL cert on that drone server doesn't do the right thing.
So anyone have questions, first of all, because I got a few, but I don't want to hog the mic. So the end state would be no drone at all.
Correct.
Right? Okay. All right. Second question. Everyone on the internet is talking about signed Docker images. Since we're in there anyway, does it make sense? If I'm pulling on the wrong string, just let me know.
No, it's a great question. It's a great
Yeah.
question. So there's a bit of fragmentation inside of the Docker ecosystem with regards to signed images. There is the mechanism that's built into Docker itself, which is Notary v1. There's been active work going on Notary v2 for in 2 years. I don't know that it's actually ready. in the interim, there's also been a project and Notary is based on the update framework Tough, and it has a notion of how do you handle build serve compromises, et cetera, with regard to secure supply chain. And it's basically just a set of delegated and delegated key hierarchy, let's say, where you can revoke the build keys, as far as how that actually works. The other interesting stuff has been coming out of Google's Cosign project, SigStore project, and those tools are extremely usable and extremely simple. They're just not built into anyone's workflow, but we could document how you could verify your image. And on the issue with Notary V1 is that the signature is tied to the repo location. So if you pull the image and you publish to an internal repo, you effectively lose the signature. With Cosign, the signature is a sidecar that is verifiable independently of image movement. And it just uses the blob capability on the Docker registry. The challenge I've had with this is that we would have to expose the master keys effectively for these signatures through our CI infrastructure without taking advantage of stuff like Tough. There is a separate issue. There is a separate capability for Cosign to actually store directly inside of a provider KMS store. There is also, but that of course needs provider keys. If we're primarily moving to GitHub Actions, that it also has its own problems that you can only expose those off of master. And it also revolves around static keys, which we don't want to do. There's been separate work done by GitHub itself with regards to OIDC, Open Identity Federation, which can work to get you cloud provider credentials without static keys associated to the project or the action. So there's enough stuff here that I would actually want to run this stuff by a security person.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts. Yeah,
there's a good amount of moving parts, and we don't want to introduce additional complications or false instances of security, and so that would be the only other consideration around it. It's just making sure we get somebody to help us review on that, just because of there's a good number of moving parts in this stuff. We also currently the nightly functional builds that we run against each provider are not currently accessible to the community. We should be able to toggle that switch relatively soon. The only consideration is that it potentially exposes the account IDs that are being used for the functional tests. That
exposes the what again? I'm sorry. Is it
the cloud accounts that get exposed in the build logs? I mean, CI is one of those things that everyone should have, but it is definitely it's definitely the Achilles heel with regards to contribution or value on a short-term basis. So finding the right prioritization for this stuff is the open question. With regards to general build like supply chain security, like the move to Poetry for this actually has caused a significant increase. We now do checks and validation against our entire dependency stack for any builds or any CI.
So would you say moving to Poetry has helped our coverage for supplies?
It is helped us do additional validation that the bits that we're downloading correspond to the known good bits via SHA-256 checksum stuff. So if someone injected a bad package into PyPy,
got you,
it would fail in our CI before we ever released a package.
Checksum. So if we got
Now, that doesn't apply to an end user doing a pip install. It does apply to our Docker image distribution, as well as to users that are pulling and using Poetry themselves. Or installing from Git, I should probably rephrase, doing developer install.
Yeah, I will.
But this stuff feels mostly like it's in the weeds. So,
Yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is link to just the timestamp of the video instead of trying to translate. This is all right. Is there any questions anyone has about any of this? Yeah, I mostly asked about the thing because I'm noticing a lot of projects. I follow a lot of the SIG store stuff, and seeing a lot of projects announcing that they're signing stuff and seeing how they do it and stuff has been pretty visible. So I thought I would ask because it looks pretty cool.
yeah, supply chain attacks cover a large variety of things. The nature of signing things still means that your CI server becomes a more valuable target, which is what, and frankly, that's some of the major supply chain attacks over the last few years. Those have been the primary point of compromise. You look at the PHP one or the SourceFire one. It was really around the CI systems that the elevated access was created to inject things into the distributions.
Gotcha. Right. Any other comments on this before we move on?
In other words, blindly trying to address supply chain security can also increase your risk of supply chain security attacks.
Yeah. And, I think it's important too, when we look at this kind of stuff where it's like, well, sure, you're adding checks, but you're also adding complexity and moving parts and that kind of stuff. All right, moving on to the CNCF Easycla bot. Kapil kind of showed me his workflow on how we manage people signing the CLA for the project. And I went ahead and joined the CNCF channel for that, and going to work with other maintainers to see how they're kind of managing those assets. Because if there's certain things that we'd like to be able to do in there that we can't, like search for people who have actually signed the CLA by name and all sorts of good stuff. So I've been spinning up on that. Kapil, is there anything you want to add to this other than like we want to make the CLA a lot easier than it has been in the past?
Yeah, we want to make it a little bit easier. We'd love to be able to also just email contributors, hey, you want some free swag, other things. The current mechanism that we're doing with Easy CLA is not easy, and we're investigating some options with them and potentially looking at if we want to do something else. Right now, I think we're at the process of we're just trying to document all the people that have had problems with it and the various problems they've had, just so that we can go back to the Easy CLA as an open source project, and to see if there's any addressability around these usability pain points.
All right. Any questions on the CLA? We are working to make that better. Events are already covered. Make Gitter easier, which is one of my long-going projects here. The Element project, which does a little GUI for Matrix, did a major release either this morning or yesterday, and I've been kicking the tires on that. So if you actually go to the Cloud Custodian page, and then you click on Community, it actually takes you to this chat thing. If you click on Matrix and keep clicking forward, you'll end up on a web app that might not be working here. That kind of gives you it wasn't working this morning, but it's working today because they were doing like a deploy or something. I don't know. So this kind of gives you an alternate chat. I'm not quite ready to say, hey, we should use this as default and things like that. But I am experimenting with different UIs and things like that for chat. And it's got like nice search. I don't think we'd ever use anything like the video calls or the voice calls or any of that stuff. But
Element also has nicer native clients for those on mobile.
Yes,
question is, I don't believe it. Have they figured out threading yet?
I literally saw the release announcement while I was doing stuff. I have not, other than log into it to make sure it works to show everyone in the meeting. I have not tried it yet. And I know there's native clients. This might be a small sample size. Has anyone tried the WeChat plugin by any chance?
Have used the
Oh.
WeChat plugin in the past. I mean, it works if you're a terminal person. It works pretty well, but
Right.
you do lose some of the details, the code formatting, the emoji.
Sure.
I mean, the images, all that stuff. You know.
Yeah.
I just tried to thread a reply to you in Element. So if you want to do it live and see how it came through.
Oh, that does seem to work. Oof.
George, you got to show it.
Oof is
Oh.
not encouraging.
Oh. I didn't mean to say oof out loud. All right, now I got to show. All right, let's try it.
You got the web?
Yeah, because anyone see that? Everyone see that still? So we click here.
Yep.
See, and part of the problem is I'm trying to figure out how to. Sometimes I try a new client and it's like input your server data, and I don't know what to put in there because it's some matrix bridge thing. So if I click on this, so testing. Will this make a thread? That's not what we wanted to see, right? We wanted to see something Slack-like, probably, right? Where it was like.
I mean, if you go back to Gitter, it did put it all in a thread, but still doing it entirely from matrix or element is a little awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, is it threading in? Is that properly threading in the getter?
It is properly threading on Gitter, which I don't think it used to do.
No, it did not.
So that does now, which is cool.
Interesting. So if I do go to Gitter.
Yeah, that did not used to work. So that's actually a significant improvement.
Yeah, that is better. Okay, well, the multi-year long process of evaluating GUIs continues. So good to know there. Documented server-side filters, we did that. And then the last tip of the day that we have is AJ and I were doing some digging. And I found this tools, Kapil knows this, but just for everybody else. In the Cloud Custodian source, there's a folder called tools in there /dev, and there's a bunch of convenience scripts there. And for part of the talks that we wanted to do for Governance as Code Day, we wanted to show, hey, what are some of the things that have landed in the past year without us manually having to dig through GitHub. So there's a changelog.py in there, and it's got lots of features that you can help, including date ranges. So you can put in a year, year's worth of dates and get a year's worth of changes. And you can also do stuff by release. So this is definitely interesting to look at. If you find yourself doing git log and, oh no, I think I could put together a bash script to do stuff. We found that there were some things in here that are already done.
I think we actually documented when we did the recording on the doing a custodian release live in this meeting. Actually showed using that to generate. This is what generates all the release notes for releases as well.
Yeah,
you did. The part that I missed when we originally went through it was that if it will generate, and George and I were talking through this about showing schema diffs. We're like, oh, it would be really cool if you could just get diffs between arbitrary custodian versions, and like, oh, that would make sense in the changelog, and it will give you a schema diff if you give it a release start date, a starting release rather than a date, and you leave the end off. It'll do like the schema diff between that release and the current code, and that part I had missed. So,
and
but
that
now,
is this part here, right?
Yeah. So now that is enshrined, and I've seen it in the notes and just didn't see that was the right combination of parameters to make the script generate those schema changes. So that's neat.
Yeah. So if you find yourself, maybe you did an upgrade and you're like, oh, this thing changed, I wonder where it changed. This tool might help you to like search through all that stuff and find out exactly where the zig turned into a zag. Any other comments on this one? This was a lot of fun. This was AJ and I got to sit and dig through a bunch of stuff and try to figure things out, and that was fun. So yeah, if you're running through the code base and you find a cool tool or something like that, by all means, feel free to let us know about it.
I think there's even a whole talk at Custodian Day about all the ecosystem of tools we have.
You see, we're kind of learning.
Liz was up there talking about having tools. So yeah, this is one of them.
Hey, if you see a file in there that ends in py, it's probably a talk. See, that's a talk idea. So, and with that, we've reached the end of the official agenda. the PR issue thing, I wanted Kapil to take more time to talk about where we want to move to CI, since that's a lot of moving pieces, and felt it was kind of important to go through that. Does anybody have any agenda items or anything they'd like to bring up? Pet issues? Did something burn you this week? Or is there a burning PR that you need or anything like that? Now's your chance to say hello. And if not, we will give everyone 20 full minutes back. All right. Thanks, everybody. Look for my post on the Google group with the link to the YouTube video, the notes, and the registration and all that stuff. And the link to the schedule will all be in the notes. And so hope to see you all here soon. We are coming down to what, 2-3 weeks maybe until KubeCon. So hope to see all of you there. And happy Wednesday, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Wait,
Take
no,
care.
it's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh my
This
god.
talk's going to sound
Okay.
great tomorrow, George.
It is going to be great.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.
Bye.